Hello everyone, as Aisling said, my name is Kevin Doolin. I'm the Director of Innovation in TSSG. That means I'm responsible for our applied research leading towards our commercialisation activities. Today I'm going to focus on our work in Horizon 2020. As you can see on the diagram here, we've been in Agri-Tech related funding for multiple years now, but it's very much gained momentum around 2017-2018. And I'm going to focus on these last set of projects here that are indicated in boxes where we've secured funding from Europe. I suppose the first question is, what are we trying to do to help Europe in general? A lot of people ask me, why are we doing these ICT and agri projects? What's the point and how does it relate to policies? So the digitalisation in general brings a lot of opportunities to the EU around the farming sector and rural areas, but there are many barriers that still need to be overcome. For example, infrastructure and connectivity and broadband, obviously in Ireland, is still a key issue, but also raising awareness with farmers around the benefits of ICT technologies, developing farmer skills in that particular area. Standardisation and interoperability of different systems is critical as well, and TSSG engages quite a lot with the NSAI around standards. As we progress, data ownership is going to become a critical issue as we deploy sensors and different technologies on farms and across the supply chain. Who actually owns that data, how can they share the data, and who has responsibility for it? It will become a problem. And of course, financing investments. It's all well and good for us to say you need the latest and greatest ICT, but if you can't afford it, you're not going to get very far with it. And there's also some risks we need to consider, such as the digital divide, again, data ownership, increased concentration around the agri-food chain itself, the uncertain impact of jobs. So recently Amazon now has machines that will pack boxes faster than humans. What's going to happen in the agri-space still remains to be seen, and the overall socio-economic impact. But the reasons we're doing this, I mean, the future CAP is on the way. I'm sure Commissioner Hogan will talk about it a little bit later. It's about ensuring fair income, increasing competitiveness, balancing the power within the supply chain, taking action on climate change, looking at environmental care, preserving our landscapes and biodiversity, generation and renewal, creating vibrant rural areas, and looking at protecting food and health quality. So what I'm showing here, I'll talk a bit louder because I'm going to walk, is a suite of projects that we've got funded by the European Commission. I'm going to confuse the cameraman. I'm going to do that. So within each of these projects, we're focusing on various aspects of digitalisation of agriculture to support the digital single market, precision agriculture, which you'll have heard referred to earlier on this morning, but particularly looking around climate change and ecosystem development. How do we produce more with less? And how does all this support policy? How do we create open dialogues and data sharing throughout the supply chain and the technology and agriculture industries? Digital agricultural knowledge information systems, the future of the CAP and new technology developments. So I'm just going to briefly run through what we're doing within these projects to address these particular areas and how you guys can get involved. So the very first one, as Aisling already mentioned, is a project called DEMETER. DEMETER was funded in the last round of funding through the Horizon 2020 programme. I'm the coordinator of the project. It's still subject to grant agreement. It's going to kick off in September. But just in a nutshell, we have 17 million euro in budget. That's 15 million euro from the Commission, 17 in total when you bring in the industrial contribution. We're spread across 18 countries, 15 member states for now. We're still not sure about Brexit. That number might fluctuate a little bit. We have 60 partners, which is quite a large consortium. And we're going to run 20 different pilots across 5 different agricultural sectors. We're going to cover 318,000 hectares of land, and we have about 6,000 farmers on board. Also, what's very important about this project is we have the World Farmers Organization as one of the core partners in the consortium, and they have said they'll disseminate the results out across 47 countries to around 1.5 billion people in our industry. Within the project, we're taking a multi-actor approach, so it's not just a bunch of us techies thinking we know what to do for the agricultural sector. We have stakeholders from right across the farm, or right across the supply chain, from the 6,000 farmers on the ground. We have companies like John Deere, for example, looking at new technologies to deploy in their tractors. And we've spread our pilots throughout Europe. Hazel mentioned earlier about cascade funding and open calls that come from these projects. So within Demeter, next year we'll have €1 million to give out to small to medium enterprises and technology providers throughout Europe to run some innovation experiments as part of the project. And I will be the person to contact for that. So if you see an area we're developing within the project and you think your technology or even your farm or whatever it might be could get involved, you can come and talk to us and we can help you try to leverage some of that funding. I caveat that by saying it's free money, so it's going to be extremely competitive and it will be across Europe. So just to look at some of the areas we're covering within our pilots, in the areas of arable crops, we're focusing a lot on water and energy management. I presume we're going to give these slides out at the end so you can go into the details. Also looking at precision agriculture, precision machinery. In fruit and vegetables, it's about focusing on health and high quality crops, including things like decision support systems, for example, for olive growers down in Greece. We have another set of pilots looking at the livestock sector, where we're focusing on animal health and about high quality. And within that, we're working, actually TSSG is working with Tyndall and Chagas to have an Irish pilot focusing on animal well-being in the dairy sector. And then we have a kind of a cross-sectoral suite of pilots that look at the full supply chain and interoperability and some robotics as well. So at a very high level, what we're actually trying to do in the project, which is probably what I should have said at the start, is about integrating all these different systems across the ICT agri supply chain at a data level, so creating new standards or leveraging new standards to make data fully interoperable right across the supply chain, looking at protecting that data and then solving issues around data ownership and then applying it into different agricultural contexts. The next project I want to mention is a project, and I see Paul Malone is the coordinator here. So this is a project called MELD, early lameness detection through machine learning. So it came from our SFI Centre Connect, where the guys were doing some fundamental research on lameness detection in animals. And subsequent to that, the guys actually applied for an actual cascade fund themselves through the Internet of Farm and Food 2020 project, which is a large-scale project running in Europe at the moment. So this is an example of what you can do with cascade funding. So lameness is one of the third biggest problems in herd management in the country. It costs about €275 in treatment for every case of lameness, and it costs Irish dairy farmers approximately €80 million a year. This project is tackling that issue head on, and they're running trials in Portugal, Israel and South Africa with dairy and beef herds of around 2,000 cattle. The obvious benefits emerging from the project will be the reduction in treatment costs, the reduction in the use of antibiotics and the increase in yield. Early results from the trials some of the guys have been running have showed lameness detection is produced 3 days in advance of actual visual observation on the animal. And Paul Malone there is the guy to talk to about that one. The next one is another European project that's going to start in June. It's called NEVA, and it stands for New IACS Vision in Action. IACS are the integrated automation and control systems. And this project specifically focuses on digitalization of the Common Agricultural Policy. So again, it's about taking elements from different sectors within the CAP and digitizing it and integrating the data at a higher layer, and then providing that information back to the various payment agencies. Within TSSG, we have two key roles within the project. The first one is data oversight and data management for the payment agencies across Europe. So when they're trying to pull all this data out of different countries and harmonise it, we need to make sure that's managed in the proper manner. The second thing we're doing is developing an application to run in a trial here in Ireland to facilitate farmers to adhere to land parcel management requirements so they can get their grants and so on. Essentially, it'll be an application where we'll send a request to a farmer to go out to a particular parcel of land, to take a photograph of that parcel of land. It could be of an animal, it could be of the grass, it could be of a fence or whatever it is, whatever's needed to meet the requirements on the CAP. And then it'll put that photo up in the cloud, and we can use data analytics and visualization to actually analyze it to see are they meeting the requirements to get their grants and so on. And Zita Dooley, down in the corner there in the pink jacket, is the lady responsible for that project in TSSG. So Hazel mentioned Smart Agri Hubs, which is the large-scale project looking at Agri-ICT, digital innovation hubs. There's another one we're involved in that's just about to start, which is called Agrobo Food. Very similar story to what you'll have just seen with Hazel. It's a large-scale project. They've got 7 innovation experiments. It's particularly focusing, though, around the robotics area. And again, there's going to be a series of open calls worth about €8 million to have new innovation experiments and new industrial challenges around the areas of robotics in agriculture. And the plan is to benefit more than 50 European SMEs with that funding. And again, Hazel is the person to talk to about leveraging that funding when it comes on stream, I would guess, late next year. But I can't say the point often enough. It's really, really worth your while having to think about these open calls and cascade funding. It's free money, so to speak, from Europe. There's no equity involved. You can take high risks and do high risk experimentation on something you want to do in the Agri-ICT sector. So with all these new technologies and new projects, it's quite obvious that precision agriculture is actually happening. What may not be quite as obvious is that it requires substantial computing power to actually analyse and take care of all of this. The issue today is that high-performance computing is broadly inaccessible. It's extremely expensive, and there's quite relatively limited expertise nationally and internationally in the HPC area, particularly when you start to deal with big data, data mining, artificial intelligence and machine learning, IoT sensor data access and programming, and then things like HPC and algorithms and analytics. So TSSG has another project that we're coordinating that's aiming to solve that particular issue. This project kicked off in January. It's a €15 million project called Sibella. And what Sibella is going to do is to abstract high-performance computing resources to make them more accessible to industry in general, to allow faster time to market for various solutions. This will allow, in terms of AI and machine learning, faster times for model building and faster times for training and using these models. So it's one thing to build an AI model or an algorithm, but you have to take the time to actually train it before it becomes useful. This will in turn allow, when we've pulled all the data out of the various elements of the supply chain, allow us to search for different insights within this very complex data sets and potentially expose hidden meanings within that data. It'll provide data at the fingertips in terms of weather patterns, soil temperature, sea conditions, UV factors and so on. And will allow a lot more informed decision making for the farmer and for the industry in general. The idea is that the main improved outcomes for this is going to be better quality food, longer shelf life, a higher yield, differentiated produce, new markets and less food waste. Again, we're going to have a number of trials within the project covering 2 broad areas. One is on precision agriculture, looking at soy yield and protein prediction, grape production and harvesting, organic food production, robotic systems for arable, and crop yield forecasting. And then on the livestock side, it's primarily focusing actually around pig farming, so pig weighing optimization, sustainable pig production, open sea fishing, herd management and health, and also aquaculture monitoring and feeding optimization. And Dr. Stephen Davey in TSSG is the guy responsible for that, and I have 1 minute. So if anybody wants to get involved, obviously there's multiple different ways. The first is come and talk to PACE. PACE is the point where we bring all of these different initiatives together and disseminate it back out to industry. PACE doesn't exist to make money for PACE. PACE exists to bring money to you guys in funding and to enable you to develop new research. The second way, again, through PACE or through TSSG, is to access the multiple cascade funds that are out there. There's about €10 million, maybe €20 million coming up within the next 24 months for cascade funding. And we can help you design those innovation experiments and try and secure that funding. And also, if anyone's interested in coordinating another proposal, it's going to be submitted into the European Commission in April next year, and it's addressing one of the Horizon 2020 work topics, DTICT 09, which is digital service platforms for rural economies. So we've just started to build a consortium around that, but if anybody has an interest in that particular area, come and talk to me, and we could see, can we bring you on board and try and help you get some funding in that regard as well. And there's my contact details.